TopMedTalk.
Well, hello and welcome to TopMedTalk. I'm Desiree Chappell, managing editor of TopMedTalk, and I am thrilled to be here for the ERAS Cardiac Society first virtual meeting. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's day 2. It is the first in-person meeting that we have done in over a year, actually. And I have to say, it's been wonderful to see other human beings and to be in a room to collaborate. Of course, we've all been vaccinated. It's a small group. We've all been vaccinated. We're all social distancing. Unfortunately, Monty Mythen, our editor-in-chief, obviously is not here from London. That's okay. We are still here. We've had some wonderful conversations, wonderful sessions during the past 24, 48 hours, and looking forward to celebrating the successes. So here with me today, we have a couple of our board members for the ERAS Cardiac Society, Dr. Kevin Lobdell and Dr. Rawn Salenger. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Good. Well, Kevin, you are a fan fave on TopMedTalk. I don't know if you know that or not, but you are. So thank you. I'm glad you're back. And actually, Ron, I don't think you're out on TopMedTalk, but you eventually will be for participating in EBPOM before.
Oh, so, right. Yeah, that was fun.
So that'll be out on TopMedTalk as well. So I'm sure you will become a fan favorite as well. But Kevin, it's so great. Both of you guys, thank you so much for having TopMedTalk participate in the first virtual meeting this year. It has been fantastic. We had a great TopMedTalk session this morning, talking about a national enhanced recovery cardiac program, which will be interesting to see, what comes of that in the coming years. But I just thought we'd take the opportunity to chat with you guys a little bit about the meeting, what you thought about it, how did it go for you, and, the future of the society, and then maybe dig in a little bit deeper with some of the topics that are really of interest to you. So, Kevin, I'm first going to let you kind of give a little bit better introduction and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Kevin Lobdell. As you mentioned, I'm on the board as treasurer for the ERAS Cardiac Society. I've been involved, I think now for 4 years, just shortly after the first meeting, and it's been a terrific group to collaborate with. So that's been a lot of fun. Closer to home with Atrium Health in Charlotte, North Carolina, System Director of Quality Education Research. We're a big system and we're growing. We've just recently merged with Wake Forest University. Oh. We're in the process of not only creating system level service lines and academic chairs in the traditional ways or domains, but also building a medical school in Charlotte. Wow. Working on an innovation alley to connect Charlotte and Winston-Salem. So there's a lot of exciting things going on.
Very good. Well, I don't know if it's a rumor or not, but I heard that you have joined the military.
Correct. August 13th, 2020, I was commissioned. One of the most memorable days of my life, quite frankly. And I'm in the process, just having completed basic officer leadership phase 1 and headed to Fort Sill for direct commissioning course.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for your dedication and devotion to our country and volunteering really to do that. And just real quickly, what made you decide to do this? Were you in the military before?
No, it's a good question. In fact, after this, I could share a YouTube video that the Army put together that went through that. But my father, who's still alive, that greatest generation, turned 18, was in the Battle of the Bulge. Uncle was a Marine at Iwo Jima, and other family members that served. It was something that I'd always thought about when I was young. When the time came, say, to go to college, I had seriously thought about the academies. But looking back, I think, one, I was uncertain about that sort of decision. Two, I'm not sure that I had the discipline. And to probably summarize that as I look back on myself, I don't think I was mature enough at that stage in my life. It never left. I really had seriously considered it. As you probably remember, somewhere in 90 was Gulf War. I was at the University of Minnesota. We were talking about mobilizing a group to help, but that ended very quickly. Ironically, I gave my chief's talk on war surgery. Again, it was something that I was just interested in, but a year becomes 2 and 2 becomes 10 and 10 becomes 20. And I realized if I don't do this, that it wasn't going to happen. So we were at one of the big meetings. I think it was STS or AATS out in San Diego. I talked to the recruiter. It took about a year and a half to go through the whole process, age waiver, security clearance, and just the process. But again, commissioned in August of 2020. And it's a great next chapter in my life. I'm really honored to be a part of it and to serve.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, again, thank you. I can't wait to hear more about where this takes you. And like you said, in your next chapter. Well, Ron, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I'm the chief of cardiac surgery at University of Maryland, St. Joseph Medical Center. We have a busy cardiac surgery program. We're mainly a surgical hospital. Several years ago, we entered into a partnership with Virginia Mason in Seattle and developed a value delivery system along the framework of the Virginia Mason production system, which is based on the Toyota production model. And our logo for that, we call it our St. Joe's value delivery system. And it's literally transformed our organization. It's come from the top down. Our CEO is dedicated to it. It was his vision. And we actually have an office called our transformation office where people train. And our logo is Better Never Stops. And it's been great. When that CEO started at St. Joe's, he suggested to me that I get something that we decided called Integrated Care Team for Cardiac Surgery together, where we meet every month. And kind of serendipitously, I got interviewed by the ERAS Cardiac Society at about the same time, about 3 years ago, and they invited me to join the board, and it all fit together perfectly because I'd say Better Never Stops could equally as well be the logo for ERAS overall in clinical work. So, and ERAS is all about delivering value to the patient, which is ultimately what our hospital is trying to transform itself into. Yeah. So everything has fit together nicely. And the people, it's just been such a great journey for me to be involved. The people on the executive board and the people on the advisory board and our subject matter experts are all people that are just dedicated to excellent clinical care. I've learned a ton from just talking to everyone. And even the experts in the ERAS cardiac movement are here to learn. And it's just an amazing and refreshing group to be involved with.
I think that the COVID environment has really challenged us to transform, to learn at a rate and change that's unprecedented. And when I say that, it's both, say, clinically and academically. And really, one of the key elements is changing the way we think about the world. And I think we clearly, with computing and the Internet of Things, have realized now we're in a networked world, right? Yeah. So if you look at what you highlighted, sort of the great atmosphere that we have here in Houston with the studio and getting together the board and like-minded, aggressive experts, yet connecting with the world. I haven't seen another meeting like that. It's been an incredible joy, both personally to be with people, as you say, because we haven't been able to do that for a year, but also people all around the world. And I think it's proven by not only the number of people that we've now counted somewhere in the area of 1,400 that have signed up and participated, but also their engagement. So how many different talks they're participating in and viewing sponsors' offerings and that sort of thing. So I would say that to me is really an incredible highlight. It's an opportunity for us to learn, improve, to transform the way we have meetings and network with people around the world, which is all back to Better Never Stops, right? Or one of the things that I've often talked about with our team is better, faster, cheaper, smarter, and tell the whole world about it. And let me focus on the smarter. It's not really per se that we're smarter than other people, but it fits with that better, faster, cheaper, smarter, tell the whole world about it. It's having very short learning cycles. You want to be able to learn faster than other people. And I think this networked effort that we're, helping catalyze and accelerate is really a part of the secret towards the future.
So what are some of the highlights for you? Are there any particular sessions that, we can go back and look or that we shouldn't miss?
It's a great question. The thing that stands out to me on my very first session, which was a session about transfusion rates and pre-op anemia, I was lucky to be the moderator, and our three panelists, we had a panelist from Singapore, a panelist from Sao Paulo, and a panelist from Massachusetts. And that was amazing to me that we kind of, similar to what Kevin was saying, that we can engage people around the world and interact so seamlessly. At the same time, kind of the duality of the conference for me has been, we have all recognized, and I think we've all talked about it, that being here in Houston, being immersed, being focused, being away from our daily duties has allowed us to really focus on the topic, and it's allowed us to do the informal learning that we're so used to at meetings. That is still valuable going forward once we emerge from COVID. So I feel like we've discovered an ability to connect with the world, but we still need to maintain that human element going forward and some way to merge those two things. And if you really want to get ideal about it, a way to feel the audience a little more, that would become like the ideal meeting environment.
Yeah.
So as much as we've reached out to the audience, we've had great participation, great questions coming in. How great would it be if we could also see the audience that we were speaking to?
Yeah.
It'd be amazing. As far as specific sessions, I thought the acute kidney injury session was amazing. Rigid sternal fixation was great. The regional anesthesia blocks was very informative. That's something that we're still, in the kind of thinking about stage. So it was very informative for us. There's so much good content at the meeting, but those are three of the ones I think that stood out for me.
Yeah.
I was going to say globally, an observation, and we've chatted a little bit about this, but again, goes back to say accelerated in the COVID era, is flipping the way meetings typically work. Many of our academic meetings will be a series of PowerPoints, sometimes even death by PowerPoint, and then very brief discussion. And we've had shorter, more TED-like talks and then rich discussion, bringing people in. And I think that's a real lesson learned. And it parallels something that I've sort of discovered in the COVID environment, and it's listening to a lot more podcasts than I had previously. And I really, as I've thought about this and analyzed it, I love the longer form conversation. And I think we're able to bring that out in this medium, take advantage of the unique skill sets of some of the people that participate, having the mediator moderate these discussions. Ron, you've done a wonderful job at that. In fact, I like to listen. So when I was asked to moderate one of the sessions, I pulled Ron in and he was able to carry me through that. I will tell you that you and Monty are extraordinarily gifted, right, at bringing people in, but very specifically like the conversations, the dialogue, the podcast. I remember when we first did this back in Raleigh, geez, would it be 18 months ago, maybe even 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. I remember just thinking how terrific you are at that. Probably the only downside is you're such a warm and wonderful individual in a podcast. Not all of it comes through, but you're incredibly gifted at that. And we thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you for that. Well, let's dig in a little deep because, this is our opportunity to do that. A big focus of enhanced recovery, there's the technical aspect, but there's also the EQ part of it, right? How we get these things done. And, a lot of people will say it's through the fact that we're working through the team and it's a multidisciplinary thing. And, teamwork is so important. I know that concept really is, a focus for both of you. So Kevin, let me start with you. Tell me a little bit about, your passion for this and how you are trying to use this as you go forward in your own educational endeavors.
You mean sort of generically, like the leadership, the teamwork? Well, probably the things that differentiate what I'm doing now from when I started is the practice that was involved, but maybe even more pointed, all the things that I did wrong and just continue to learn from it. As a cardiac surgeon, and Ron can probably laugh about this, I think in the words of the executive coach that I've worked with for years, he said, Kevin, when I think of you, I think first, right, and punished. And what that really looked like was I think we process a lot of information quickly, and then we declare what needs to be done. I mean, whether it's in the operating room or in the ICU. But let me tell you, it doesn't work in leading teams. What it looks like for me now, and it probably capitalizes on skills that I've had or traits, but just needed to sort of rearrange the way things work, is to listen much more actively than I ever have, be thoughtful, patient, and then really tie together what people have said or positive deviations that we've identified. And then either letting the people that are the root of a positive deviation lead those efforts, or alternatively, instead of declaring, using the interrogative, knowing that we have a goal in mind, how we're going to get there, but through a series of questions, getting the team to understand exactly what the process is going to look like to get to that destination that we're after. So it's, again, quite different. The best way I could describe that in synopsis was when I decided to go back to business school and sort of the pitch that I needed to make to the administration. I always thought that I was good at doing things, whether it was in sports or in cardiac surgery, but I was not very good at doing things through other people.
Yeah.
And that has to become the focus of leading, of teamwork, of implementing practices like ERAS cardiac.
Yeah, absolutely. Ron, what are your thoughts on that? Because you're obviously a cardiac surgeon, leader of the team. You've led some other collaboratives and things like that. Tell me about your thoughts.
Yeah, well, Kevin summarized a lot of leadership ideas very well. And I tell you, I tried to be, I'd like to be like that quiet, thoughtful, listening leader, but it didn't work well for me. So I just went with my own natural talking thing. And, but I learned, interestingly, probably over the last 8 years, that a lot of the skills, and Kevin alluded to this, a lot of the skills that led to my success as a cardiac surgeon would have me hit a ceiling as a leader in the healthcare environment. And I was lucky to land at St. Joe's in Towson, where there's a lot of exceptional individuals. And I mentioned our CEO, and part of that system that he set up was our true north for our organization. And we try to really make it something that we refer to. And it's a very simple thing. I mean, even I can remember it. It's our patients, our colleagues, and our community. And I think as a cardiac surgeon, I had our patients down pat every day of my life. But our colleagues, in particular, I needed to pay more attention to, and to the amount of support and engagement that it takes to really allow your colleagues to know how much you appreciate them and how much you feel that the success that the patients are experiencing is coming from them. And my chief of cardiac surgery, the prior chief, I learned a lot from him, a very humble person who's very good at leading a team quietly. And I learned a lot from my OR staff, who just taught me really what it means and the benefits of flattening out the hierarchy and letting people speak up. There is a number of in a cardiac OR in general, and at St. Joe's in particular, there are some very strong individuals who have a lot to offer. And the more I'm willing to let them speak up, the better the cases are going. We started something recently in the last year that's just been fantastic, where after every case, and it came from a discussion where I said, God, it'd be great to debrief with the OR team, but there's no time. And the person I was talking to was like, well, why don't you just try it informally at the end of the case? And I thought people were going to think it was stupid or, not waste of time, but people really speak up. And I'm like, look, we do this, we're good already. But if we do this, we could see where, we could become even better. Yeah. And so that's been kind of the way that I've approached it. And our team at St. Joe's, in every arena, the OR, the ICU, and our telemetry floor, I've made a point to go around and seek the input and see what they see on the front lines when they're caring for patients. What's the problems that they're seeing? What are the rocks in their shoes that are holding them back? And then 99% of the time, they also have the solution. And you just have to kind of frame it and standardize it and let them run with it. And it's phenomenal.
To amplify that, there's a great book by Alex Pentland, who's at the MIT Media Lab. It's called Social Physics. And what they've tried to do, and we've talked a lot about technology and biometrics, is quantify various things and correlate it with success. And so to your very point, one of the things they found is they would say study meetings is the highest performing teams, meaning those that had the best results. When they'd look at the teams interact, there was an equal amount of talking in a meeting as opposed to one person dominating. Other things ended up being sort of paralanguage, finishing sentences for each other, nodding of approval, speaking in half sentences, things like that, all again correlate with the team. So sort of independently, what you just described is something that's been validated in science, right? And it's to make sure that everybody's included, they have a say. You can sift through that as a leader of a team and figure out, what are priorities or voices that should be heard that align with the true north that you mentioned. But, those are all phases. A good book, another good book, if you're interested in that sort of thing, is Call Sign Chaos by Jim Mattis. And he wrote this after his time, in the military and then as Secretary of Defense. But think in terms of direct leadership, almost like in the operating room or in an ICU. And then there becomes a higher level operational leadership. Think of maybe a hospital president, right? And then the strategic leadership, and that could be where you're working at a system level through multiple facilities. And we go through those more quickly or slowly, depending on, our skills, our traits, those sorts of things. But it's a good way to think about it. And it really does match the arc of maturation in our career. Yeah. Yeah. I'll never forget when my coach, back to those sort of things, came to me with Marshall Goldsmith's book and handed it to me. And it's what got you here won't get you there. And as you might imagine, I didn't need to read anything else. I got the message. But very pointedly, and this is an interesting thing about leadership and teamwork and uncovering those nascent traits, right, that we have. He said to me, Kevin, you're really good at being in your dad. And my dad's an engineer with that military background. Very goal-directed, very logical thinker. And my mom was just the most kind, beautiful woman that you'd ever met in your life. And what he was really saying is, I'll let you uncover that because you love your mom and you know what a great person. It's okay to be like that at work. You don't always have to be your dad.
Yeah. That's a fair point. Don't you think, Ron?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Especially surgeon leaders are very task-oriented.
Yes.
Goal-oriented, achieving results. But, you can burn out your team or you can leave them in the dust if you don't pay attention to those softer human skills of supporting your team, caring for them, and making sure you acknowledge to them that and to the rest of the world that they're the reason those results are happening.
Let's dig into that because it's something that others have had these important observations. We spend the vast majority of our time actually doing what we do, right? Mm-hmm. Performing. And that's really rare. When the outside world looks at what we do in medicine, there's no wonder there's this concern about burnout, the lack of resilience, right? So the military, as you might imagine, they might go through 3 cycles in a year, right? They might go through a deployment followed by coming back and recouping, followed by training up for a specific mission. Can you imagine if we could spend 2/3 of our time planning and training for our operations? I think it would be radically different. Some of the people that have really made us think about that carefully. The McChrystal Group, Stan McChrystal, who founded it, and Chris Fussell, the president, both military backgrounds, right? M4 led Joint Special Operations in the Middle East, and Chris at one point was his aide de camp. They're very big into this network world, leadership, teamwork. How do you execute in that environment, right? And another we've talked about briefly, Brian Ferguson with Arena Labs, they're working on some human performance dimensions in the field of medicine to try to optimize our performance. So we were talking about how does that fit with ERAS and where we're going. Ron and I have talked about we need to take some of those pages in the playbook and focus more on leadership, on team, on teaming and executing. And I think the real opportunity for us is to find a balance between goal-directed therapy and acute kidney injury and glycemic control, the traditional things, and then these softer things that are going to help us learn, implement, execute in a more timely and reliable fashion. So I think that Rawn and I will probably work with the board and try to highlight some of those things very specifically: leadership, teamwork, communication. We've even talked about training and doctrine, right? And codifying some of these things.
Absolutely.
I think that's a real opportunity.
So personally, I'm working on, we have an enhanced recovery program that's needed to be revamped. Even before COVID, it was kind of struggling a little bit. And so I've been brought onto the team, and it was like, okay, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to do this. And then it's like, I got them like, now as the leader, this is not the Desiree show. This is our team. This is our ERAS team. So let's get everyone, because you have to have them vested in it. And the first thing that I've tried to do is like, let's talk about like, what are the issues? Like what problems are we having? What, do you have any thoughts on, how we might do this better, or how we can improve? And I have, from the moment I started on my personal ERAS journey, being part of a program 5 years ago, I would always try, just like you said, Rawn, going up to the floors and talking to the nurses. I love you. What are the rocks in your shoes? Like what are the things that drive you crazy? What can we do to make your life easier, and get that process feedback? Because that's I think we all grow together, as whenever and you have to create that feedback loop. You can't just like stop. Can't just do it once and then stop. And I think that happens a lot.
Right. What you're saying, I think, is you have to take the viewpoint that if the nurses and the physical therapists and the pharmacists are resisting the idea that you're putting forward, then there's probably something wrong with it. Yeah. It doesn't work for them for some reason, and you got to find out what that is. So, and I think, you talk about revamping an ERAS program or starting an ERAS program, you got to start at the beginning. And I think the beginning is really talking to people about the need for change, not even mentioning ERAS, just saying how are things, defining the current state, where are the deficiencies, and building the need that I think you could build at almost any institution that, except for, unless you have like perfect outcomes, building the need to say, look, we could do better. We could do better for our patients. And I think if you establish that why do we want to do anything? If you can establish that and get people on board, then you can move forward. But a lot of people who write about change talk about, it's so common to start in the middle and not establish that platform and that consensus around the need for change. And that ends up stalling out your efforts. And I think that's critical. And then I think if you can establish that consensus, and it doesn't have to be unanimous. I mean, what you need is enough people to start the ball rolling. Mm-hmm. And you can find them anywhere in your hospital. I mean, one of the most valuable supporters of our ERAS, we don't even have an ERAS coordinator. We have people that support the program, and their nurse managers, their APPs, their frontline nurses. And one of our most valuable ERAS people is our lead physical therapist. Oh, wow. And she's just, she's probably 30% of an ERAS coordinator for us. And just because she's so passionate and does so much. So you get a few individuals, and then you start, you assess your current state, and then you start say, okay, well, we can address these needs with ERAS. And if you're talking about clinical care, there's always a part of ERAS that can probably address whatever clinical deficiencies you've identified.
Yeah. Rawn, you talked about two tools, as I've heard, that aren't used enough in the clinical or in the leadership toolbox: appreciative inquiry and active listening. And it catalyzed a funny memory. One day I was sitting with a group of friends talking, and one of them used to be the CEO at Textron. And somebody was complaining about their company and their quality problems. And he was a senior guy at this point in his life, and always a clear, simple thinker. And he said, quality, that's the easiest damn thing in the world. Just ask your customer. They'll tell you exactly what the problem is. And just like you say, Rawn, if you use that appreciative inquiry and you're truly actively listening, your teams will tell you where most of those pain points are, right? Or the rocks in the shoes.
And along those lines, so I think what we are working on, and I think throughout medicine, we're still working on, is efficiently getting feedback from our patients. And so, we just placed a patient on our integrated care team that I was talking about. So this woman attends every meeting once
Fantastic.
a month, and there's nothing that she doesn't hear. Totally transparent. She sees our STS results. She hears about every initiative that we're working on. We talk about cost, we talk about outcomes, and she gives us input. And she's a good choice because she's only one person. Obviously, not one person can represent all patients, but she speaks up, and it's great.
An advocate.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so while we're able to get like frontline views, I still think we need more to hear straight from the customer. I mean, I'd love to have
You're
better
absolutely
feedback.
right. We put together for Atrium Health, particularly in the cardiovascular world, a patient advisory.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those, as you might imagine, are the actual patients. Sometimes it could be a spouse that went through. They've helped us redesign our intensive care unit, which was terrific. Perfect Care, which we've talked a little bit about. We've got a patient advisory, an example being John and Robin Fox, former coach in the NFL. I remember, great operation, did well. These are sophisticated, compliant people, right? High performing. But when they got home, what I came to realize, because he's a friend and the questions that they would have is, we send people home and basically say, good luck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, John's lightheaded. What's his blood pressure? I don't know. Don't have a blood pressure cuff. Like, where did this come from? So to your point, bringing the patients and their families under the tent and getting their feedback, that's yet another opportunity with technology, right? We've done that where we can use novel biometrics, monitor them in real time, but in addition, give them a platform for messaging. We have audio visual visits, and we do the patient reported outcome measures out to a year.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the technology part, because I know that's something that you're very excited about and getting involved in that space. And, we hear a lot about wearables, what you're discussing. We hear a lot about the technology in the OR that helps direct, there's clinical decision support tools. Where are you in your journey with technology, Kevin?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the beneficiary of a Perfect Care grant from the Duke Endowment.
Tell me what Perfect Care is in the whole.
Perfect Care is something that I had noodled on for probably 10 years before getting the grant, but it was really trying to transform care, right? The same thing that we're all after, using the more advanced tools. And an example, I can remember just these anecdotes, but you put them together into a package. Now, Perfect Care. I can remember being at a patient's bedside, and I think it was a family member said, "Oh, good, doctor's here. I haven't talked to anybody for 3 days," or something like that. How many times have we heard that?
Yeah.
And I thought, this is crazy. Like, that was a stage where my girls, younger at the time, were enamored with the idea of FaceTiming with us, right? And you think our children could FaceTime with us anytime, yet we have patients' family that haven't talked to a doctor for 3 days. So you hold that thought. 2013, I got very involved, with Fitbit and quantified self. Again, I saw the opportunity to look at steps and sleep and heart rate and things like that in a way and integrate it with our care. And simply put, you can imagine this analogy. We should be seeing how, as our patients recover, how far they're walking, right? And you could begin to use that as a proxy for how well they're recovering. And maybe, just maybe, that correlates with their readmission or their lack of readmission. So that was yet another sort of thing. And obviously the text messaging and pathway development. So when we went, I think it was 2017 or so, to the Duke Endowment, proposed this. They gave us $1.1 million for 3 years. We're now a little over 2.5 years into it. And because of COVID, we had to extend it a little bit because cardiac surgery volumes went down and so forth. But what we're doing is we're taking STS data. Mm-hmm. We're also including financial data, audio-visual remote monitoring, the novel biometrics in the way of a fitness tracker, scale, sphygmomanometer, blood pressure cuff. We also have the ability with that Bluetooth technology, which we found is better than Wi-Fi, quite frankly, to bring in things like pulse oximetry, even glucose monitoring or anticoagulation, and then the patient reported outcome measures. sort of tie this together with the future, because we've done that now, about 350 patients. We've got readmission rates that are about 40% of benchmark, meaning we're 60% better than benchmark. We have length of stay in the cardiac surgery population that are somewhere in the area of 20-25% better, whether we're talking total length of stay or postoperative length of stay. But I think there's a rich opportunity to start to incorporate clinician-reported outcome measures, right?
Oh.
So we take all of this data and you can begin to predict performance. And as soon as we get enough patients and stream of data, we'll be able to use AI to help us, recognize some of these patterns. So, Rawn and I have been talking about the work that we're doing, building this collaborative with ERAS, with programs like Wake Med, Judson Williams that are like-minded, interested. We're already collaborating with the Virginia program with Rawn and the people, again, a networked world.
Yeah.
And that was all a part of Perfect Care's vision, that we live in a networked world. We'll get these like-minded people quantifying care in novel ways, learning together and improving faster than we ever have.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's great stuff. It really is. It's an enormous opportunity. And I'm just excited every time like Rawn and I or, Judson or the other members of ERAS get together and figure out what are these next steps that we can take to realize this dream of transforming care.
Yeah.
It's really incredible. And the most incredible thing about it, Kevin, the work is great. I love everything in the program. And I love the name too. Especially the dual meaning of the name is great. But the most incredible thing about it is, you're not just speaking about some ideal state. You've actually put it into place. You have results. You show the numbers and you show that it works. And that's amazing. I've seen your talks on this, and it's good for patients. It's good for healthcare systems. And I think if we can start to spread it, it's going to really have an impact on how we take care of our patients. And if we can get patient-reported outcomes at a year, that'll just be phenomenal. I mean, think about the few times you run into a patient in the hospital that you operated on a year or two ago, and they say, "Oh, I feel so much better. I feel so great." And you're like, for the next week, you're like the happiest guy in the world, right? You feel like you really helped somebody. And think about if we can really quantitate that, if we're really achieving things for patients, it'll be phenomenal, and it'll help us talk to our patients about what to expect.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, one, you just have to prove that it's feasible to do it. Then when you get the data, it's incredible. We just had a look back with our partner, Carium. And again, I just am amazed by these people, but an incredible team with incredibly intuitive, reliable technology. And they were talking about details, but I remember just sort of drifting in my mind and thinking, if somebody would have told us 2 years ago to put together a PowerPoint deck with the results that you wanted, I just heard them. And to your point too, and this is incredible, you mentioned your physical therapist, but I'm going to shout out Shannon Crotwell, who's our nurse navigator and clinical lead on this. It wouldn't have been possible without her. Like, you can have great technology, but you have to have somebody with passion and credibility to be intersecting with the patients and engaging them with the team and engaging them, spreading that. And we've gone through that from patient, right, to having our own nurses repurposed from the outpatient clinic to be doing this work virtually, to now spreading it to other facilities. And it's all Shannon Crotwell doing that work. The great thing about that is the growth mindset. There are too many people in medicine that have fixed mindset. Not my job. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to do that. When you get the people like you described with your physical therapist with that growth mindset that say, hey, like they teach you in the military, 2/3 of the facts, 2/3 sure I'm right, I'm making a decision, I'm moving on. You get those people, they're worth their weight in gold. Another important thing that maybe is worth highlighting, and Dan as president, I think is very good at this, and Rawn, you would multiple times in this conversation pointed out your CEO, and I'm certainly the beneficiary of leaders in the organization that give you the space to go out there and do the work and grow and guide. I don't think that there's enough of that in healthcare. I think that they've been very good at a traditional hierarchy, and, information flows up, decisions are made, it comes back down, and, frontline workers are just executing the plan. And I think, again, that goes back to, say, some of the lessons that Stan McChrystal, Chris Fussell, the McChrystal Group, learned in the Middle East 10 years ago or more, and we're now beginning to touch on, but we have to be the people that really change that paradigm in healthcare. And it's a more interactive leader. It's somebody that's more confident and willing to guide as opposed to direct per se.
Yeah, I think Dan Engelman does. He's done that for us. He just does it naturally, I think. I mean, he's constantly, you talked about, I actually thought about our ERAS board meetings when you talked about equal people speaking. I mean, it could be you speaking, could be Mike Grant, could be Sinu, could be Alex, could be Rakesh, and we're all listening and people are jumping in, and Dan facilitates all that. And how many times, it could be Vicky speaking. How many times have we been in the meeting and Dan said, he's driving for us to get more people involved. And he's not looking for someone who's published 150 papers necessarily or is famous. He's looking for someone who's dedicated to the principles of ERAS. He'll come to us with a name and say, this person, I talked to them on the phone for an hour and a half. This person is dedicated to ERAS and they're doing something. Those are the two things he looks for. And he's like, we have to get more. We already have a good number of anesthesiologists, good number of surgeons, but we're looking to really have a broad-based, now we have Vicky, so we have a CRNA, and we have Desiree involved also, and
nursing, and
we need more nursing. We need a broader
perfusion.
base.
Tim Settlemeyer at Wake Med has done a terrific job. His talk.
That's exactly right. Tim's been great at this meeting, and I'm hoping he can get more engaged.
Oh yeah, you definitely need in the world of cardiac. Need perfusion on this team for sure, because they get left out a little bit. I feel like. Well, I mean, this is a phenomenal conversation. Then this is the long form, right? This is the stuff that, I love to. But in the interest of time, one of the topics that I wanted to make sure we did not skip over before we leave it, Ron, I've heard that you've been doing some work in the transfusion space, and, reducing blood transfusion is one of those goals in enhanced recovery that we, really try and focus on. Tell me a little bit about what you've done with that in your own personal practice and your enhanced recovery program.
Well, really, it came from, we developed a collaborative, as other states have in Maryland. We now have 11 cardiac surgery programs in the state, and every cardiac surgery program belongs to the collaborative. We share all our results. They're all anonymized at this point. But the truth is, if you really wanted to, you'd know whose results are whose. But,
right.
But that's not what we focus on.
That's kind of part of it too, though. That's good.
Around 2015, it's called the MCSQI, Maryland Cardiac Surgery Quality Initiative. And around 2015, we decided to focus on blood transfusion. There was a majority of us that believed that there were too many transfusions in cardiac surgery overall, and particularly in Maryland, we were a little above the STS average, and we thought we could improve things. And we did also believe that there's associated morbidity with the transfusion. So I heard a lot of ideas from other surgeons, and it stimulated. In my institution, St. Joe's was in the middle of the pack in the state. We were not a standout in either direction. And I brought the discussion back. And I hadn't been thinking that much about transfusion before that, but I brought the discussion back to our team, to my chief at the time, and our chief of anesthesia, and our chief of perfusion.
Yeah.
And we decided we wanted to transfuse less. And we basically focused on three simple things. I mean, we didn't create a transfusion protocol. We didn't have a complete blood management system at that point. We just focused on three things. For patients on dual antiplatelet therapy, we check platelet aggregation studies to time the surgery. And we basically said if they have over 40% of their platelets active, we'll go to the OR. So that was one thing. And then we're really aggressive with retrograde autologous prime and venous autologous prime. So we prime as much with the patient's blood volume as we can. Yeah. And then the biggest thing is, we did what everybody in today's meeting was saying they don't do. We just picked a number, and we said we're not going to, and we've now ratcheted that down. So we don't say we're definitely transfusing at a certain number, but we almost never transfuse unless we get to that number. And we picked we didn't start where we are now, but today we basically don't have except in very rare cases, we don't have the transfusion discussion until we're at a hematocrit at 18 on pump or hematocrit at 21 post-op. And the truth is, post-op, we tolerate even more anemia as the culture has become more and more embedded at St. Joe's. And it's always a discussion. And we look at the things that people are talking about today. We look at lactate-base deficit, mixed venous oxygen, to decide if that unit of blood is worth the risk of the blood. Right. So it's just a risk-benefit equation at that point. And we've had remarkable results. I mean, in the last 3 years, our intraoperative transfusion rate for an isolated CABG is just a little over 1%. Wow. And in 2018 and 19, our post-op transfusion rate was a little over 10%. And in 2020, it was 8%.
Wow. And tell me, and just for those out there that may not know, and I don't know this, what is the STS
I think the
average?
STS national average is around in the low 20s, around 21% maybe. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. I think it's in that ballpark.
Well, historically, if we're talking, say, coronary only, and when I say historically, it had been there for a long time. If it's that good, I'm shocked because I haven't seen that, but it's been in the 42, 43% if you take intra-op and post-op combined in that area. And let me just highlight a couple of things that Ron said, because back to the softer side, what could people take away with that? And it's based on my experience too. One, make it an issue, right? Talking with the team, asking them what they think. And this is more important than the technical details. Number two, I think setting a threshold for transfusion. And when I say that, for us, it was really, we're going to have a discussion when the number is this. It doesn't mean you couldn't do it higher than that, but you're going to have a discussion. And our number was the same, a hemoglobin of 7. And then the third thing that was sort of a best practice backstop from the positive deviation in our organization was, how did you do that? And the response from the cardiac surgeon was, before anybody transfuses one of my patients, they have to call me. So then we asked the other surgeons, would it be okay if we do that? Yes. And so with those three things, again, awareness that it was important, 2, setting a transfusion threshold or place to have a conversation, and 3, asking the surgeon to be asked before a patient's transfused really changes things. There are a lot of technical details, but I think those are central to the success.
Okay, I'm going to ask you from the anesthesia perspective. So being the CRNA and being the one that is like, okay, are we going to do this or are we not? You know, what are the other factors? How did you bring anesthesia along? I know you said you kind of got that group together, but you know, what were some of their sticking points? Because in my brain, I'm thinking like, okay, there's some issues.
All politics is local, right?
Yeah.
So I was lucky that our chief of perfusion was like a gruff guy who had been there for 35 years and people trusted him. And he latched onto this, even though he was actually fairly liberal transfuser. He latched onto it and started tracking it. And he was discussing it with the different anesthesiologists. So he didn't do every case, obviously, but eventually they would bump up against him discussing the issue. He and then the chief of cardiac anesthesia was all in. He wanted to limit transfusion. So having those two, there was about 5 cardiac anesthesiologists. So the ones that were more liberal eventually over time just evolved and the culture changed.
You know, Ron, each time we've touched on a different subject, you've talked about, and I don't really love the term, but a champion or somebody that's a real star that can lead an effort, because no one surgeon, no one nurse can do all of this. But finding those positive deviants with a passion and expertise in particular areas and let them run with that means a lot. The way we ended up organizing ourselves to do this in the way of work groups was through phases of care. So think pre-op and prehab, intra-op, post-op, and even in the transition to home or continuity of care. Pick people that are really passionate and credible in those areas. And it really doesn't matter so much what their specialty is, right, or their clinical background. But as long as they're the person that, you know, is involved in that phase of care, they'll bring the others along. And quite frankly, as a leader of a team like you or your partners, makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. All I did was introduce the concept and then I just go brag about it. Yeah. So it's really been the other people doing
Amazing
it.
how that works when you get out of the way, right?
That's awesome. I've loved the themes of the conversation today, gentlemen. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. And I really look forward to the future of, partnering with the ERAS Cardiac Society and more conversations like this where we get down to the nitty gritty. Like it's good. It's good conversation. So Perfect Care, how do we find out more information about that? Because that's really cool to follow.
Yeah, it's easy. www.perfectcare.org.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. And I'm sure our listeners, if there's anything that they want to reach out, if they are interested in, transfusion or technology or anything, okay to reach out to you guys?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. We're trying to create that network, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The power is the network.
Yeah. All right. What is it? Better never stops.
That's right.
Love that.
Thanks, guys.
TopMedTalk.
Thanks for listening to TopMedTalk. We are excited to announce the World Congress of Perioperative Medicine happening in London this year. Check it out at ebpom.org. It will take you through to our carbon-free conference center where it has the EBPOM platform. You can find more information. Be sure to subscribe to TopMedTalk and EBPOM at ebpom.org.